The hum of the alien ship was the first sound Eli Grant heard when he woke. It was deep and distant, like a giant creature breathing through metal lungs. He blinked several times before realizing he wasn't in his repair station on Mars base anymore. The ceiling above him was smooth silver, curved like a shell. Faint blue lights pulsed through the walls, following some rhythm that wasn't human. His whole body felt heavy, as if gravity itself didn't trust him yet. He tried to move, but his legs ached. A cold blanket covered him from shoulders to knees, and when he lifted it, the chill of the air hit his skin like knives. His mind raced to recall what happened before he blacked out. The last thing he remembered was the explosion. The Xyrith dreadnought had been collapsing, and his small repair pod had been pulled in by its gravity field. He thought he'd die in that blast. Instead, he'd woken here alive, and naked under a blanket. He sat up slowly. The room was small, clean, and humming with energy. No doors, no windows, just one wall that shimmered faintly, almost like liquid metal. He could feel the faint vibration of a great engine somewhere below. It wasn't Earth technology, that much was clear. He was on a Xyrith ship, maybe the same one that dragged his pod in. The Xyrith, humanoid but tall, silver-skinned, cold-eyed, were known across the stars for their discipline and pride. They rarely spoke to humans except for trade or truce meetings. So why had they saved him? Eli rubbed his head and found a bandage. Great, he muttered. I'm patched up by the same people who shoot first and talk later. He looked around for his tools, but there was nothing, not even his uniform. Just the metallic floor, the humming walls, and the single blanket keeping him from freezing. The shimmering wall rippled suddenly, and he jumped. A shape appeared behind it, tall, graceful, moving with smooth precision. Then with a faint hiss, the wall opened like water parting. The figure stepped in. She was Xyrith. Her skin reflected the lights around her like brushed steel, her eyes glowing faint violet. She wore a long, dark mantle with symbols that shimmered when she moved. Rank markings. Eli had studied enough alien military codes to recognize an officer, maybe even a captain. Her gaze fell on him, first curious, then puzzled, then almost amused. She spoke something in her language, the words flowing like music made of metal. Eli shook his head. Sorry, Captain Shiny, English only. Her expression tightened slightly. Then she tapped a small crystal on her wrist and a soft chime filled the room. You're awake, she said, her voice now translated through a calm mechanical tone. Good. The human has survived. Eli tried to sound confident even though his heart raced. Yeah, thanks for the hospitality. I'll just get my clothes back now. She tilted her head. They were burned. You were injured when your vessel struck our defense hull. We repaired what we could. You should be thankful. Thankful, sure, he said. Just not used to waking up half frozen in alien hospitals. For a moment, she studied him without emotion. Then unexpectedly, she reached for the edge of his blanket. Eli froze. Before he could react, she pulled it off him completely. The cold air hit him again and he grabbed for it in panic. Hey, what the? But before he could finish, the Xyrith officer calmly removed her own cloak, a long, dark garment, and dropped it over him. It was warm, heavy, and smelled faintly like strange herbs and ozone. She stepped back and folded her arms. Her voice was calm, steady. Fair trade. Eli blinked at her, unsure what just happened. Fair what? You hid yourself from the cold, she said. In our culture, that means fear or shame. I removed your cover and gave you mine. Now neither of us hides. It is balance. He didn't know whether to laugh or stare. Right, so you strip people to show equality. Cultural note taken. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened slightly. You are not a prisoner, human. You were dying in the wreckage near our reactor. I saved you. My name is Captain Lyara of the Xyrith Dreadnought Velshaw. Eli looked at her more carefully. Up close, she didn't look cruel or cold. Her face had sharp lines, but there was strength in them, not arrogance. Eli Grant, he said. Engineer, Terran Fleet Maintenance Division. Though it looks like my division doesn't exist anymore. She nodded once. Then we understand each other. We are damaged too. The blast crippled our engines and half our crew is gone. We are adrift between systems. You will assist me in repairs. He stared. Assist you? You mean work for you? Work with me, she corrected. Your species built the reactor you collided with. You may know how to fix it. He blinked in surprise. That's not possible. The Xyrith never used human tech. Her gaze didn't waver. We do now. Something about her tone told him she wasn't joking. Somewhere, Someone had been sharing technology behind closed doors. He wanted to argue, but the faint tremor of the ship reminded him how bad things were. A reactor breach could destroy them both, and if he refused, they might all die, human and alien alike. He sighed. "All right, Captain. I'll help, but I'm going to need tools, and maybe some actual clothes," she nodded. "You will have both. For now, rest. The storm outside has not cleared." She turned to leave, her cloak missing from her shoulders, leaving her dressed in light armor plates that gleamed under the room's light. Before stepping through the door, she looked back once. "Do not fear, human. On this ship, debts are paid. You gave your effort to live. I gave my cloak. Fair trade." The door sealed, and Eli was left staring after her, half buried in the strange garment. He touched the fabric. It was thick, woven with something metallic yet soft. For the first time since waking, he felt a little less alone. Hours later, as he dozed in the dim light, the ship trembled again. Somewhere far below, engines coughed and failed. He could hear distant shouting in the alien tongue, metallic echoes through the corridors. He pulled the cloak tighter and listened. Something was very wrong. Moments later, a small panel beside his bed flashed red. He recognized the universal warning symbol: reactor instability. His instincts took over. He got up, ignoring the ache in his body, and pressed his hand against the wall. The design was alien, but he could feel the faint pulse of energy channels, just like human ships, but more refined. He began mapping the pattern in his head, tracing where power might flow. The ship's heartbeat told him everything he needed to know. The core was faltering and fast. The door opened again, and Liara rushed in, her calm mask replaced by urgency. "Human, Eli, get ready. The containment field is failing. You said you were an engineer." "Prove it." He didn't hesitate. "Give me access to your reactor schematics." Her eyes narrowed. "That data is restricted. Then you better start writing your last will, because in 3 minutes your reactor will go critical." She paused, then tossed him a small data crystal. "Do not fail me." He caught it, plugged it into the wall console, and began working. Alien symbols flooded the screen, and he tried to decipher them by instinct. The translation system helped a little, but not enough. Still, the logic was similar to human systems: power, flow, feedback. He rerouted 2 circuits, bypassed a burned field regulator, and used the diagnostic matrix to patch the core. The ship trembled again, harder this time. Lights flickered. Then, after a final spark of resistance, the humming steadied. The reactor's pulse smoothed into a calm rhythm again. Eli exhaled, sweat dripping from his face. Liara stood beside him, silent. Her gaze moved between the screen and his hands. Finally, she said, "You risked yourself for strangers." He smiled weakly. "Fair trade, right?" For the first time, she almost smiled. "Perhaps. Humans are strange." "Yeah," he said, leaning against the wall, exhausted. "We get that a lot." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You may yet save this ship. Sleep now, Engineer Grant. Tomorrow we work again." As she left, the hum of the reactor became almost comforting. Eli lay back, wrapping the alien cloak around him. He thought of Earth, of the blue skies he might never see again. But somehow out here, surrounded by beings who once called his kind reckless and primitive, he had found a strange sense of purpose. The last thing he heard before sleep claimed him was the steady thrum of the ship and the faint echo of Liara's words. Fair trade, a phrase that would soon change the fate of more than one world. The next morning, Eli woke to the low hum of the dreadnought and the faint smell of recycled air mixed with metallic dust. His muscles ached in ways he hadn't felt in years, but the human mind often ignored pain when survival demanded focus. The cloak Liara had given him lay over his shoulders like a shield, warming him against the cold and reminding him that he was no longer alone. He stepped out of the sleeping chamber into a corridor lit with soft blue lines along the walls. The ship seemed larger now that he was walking through it, a labyrinth of smooth metal halls and strange machinery that pulsed with energy. He had explored only a fraction yesterday, guided by Liara's terse commands and the need to stabilize the reactor. Today the work would begin in earnest, repairing the engine systems, reactivating the navigation controls, and restoring the dreadnought to functional status. Liara met him at the junction of the main corridor, her posture straight, eyes scanning him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "Engineer Grant," she said, "the core is stable thanks to your actions, but the main engines remain offline. We cannot travel until they are repaired. I figured as much, Eli replied, adjusting the cloak over his shoulders. Show me the engines. The walk to the engine bay was silent except for the soft hum of the ship. Eli observed everything. The conduits running along the walls, the panels flickering with unreadable symbols, and the occasional hiss of steam from broken coolant lines. Humans were used to improvisation, and Eli had a habit of seeing possibilities where others saw only failure. He felt the thrill of a puzzle unfolding, a challenge that stretched his mind beyond what he had known on any human vessel. The engine bay itself was massive, a cathedral of alien engineering. 3 giant turbines sat like sleeping beasts, their surfaces scarred from the blast. Sparks danced along the walls and several control panels flickered weakly. Crew members moved cautiously around him, observing but doing little, unsure of a human's methods. Eli felt their judgment but ignored it. He knelt beside the nearest turbine, running his hands over the metallic surface. This is bad but not impossible, he muttered. Liara stood behind him, watching silently. Her species was trained for control and order. Improvisation was alien to them. Explain, she said finally. Eli traced a damaged coolant line with his fingers. The plasma stabilizers are burnt out. If we replace them with these backup conduits, reroute some power lines and patch the pressure regulators, we can get at least 1 turbine online. Then we can work on the others. You are confident? She asked. In my experience, he said, confidence is the first tool of survival. Liara's eyes narrowed, but she allowed him to proceed. Crew members stepped back as he began dismantling damaged parts, improvising tools with what he found nearby. He stripped panels, rewired connections, and fashioned connectors from melted alloy fragments. To the Xyrith, his methods were reckless, bordering on sacrilege. To Eli, it was simple logic. Fix what is broken with what is available or die trying. Hours passed. Sparks flew, coolant hissed, and every time he bypassed a critical system, his heart skipped a beat. Yet gradually the turbine stirred. Lights along the panel flickered steadily, then glowed bright green. A hum ran through the bay, deep and satisfying. Eli leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. 1 down, 2 to go. Liara approached, her usual calm demeanor returning. Impressive, she said, though her voice lacked enthusiasm. Humans are unpredictable. I like to think of it as creative, Eli replied with a grin. Predictable gets you killed in emergencies. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. Very well, continue. The second turbine required a similar approach, but with more precision. The first had been dangerous. This one would be lethal if mishandled. Eli's fingers moved with steady confidence, guided by instinct and experience. The Xyrith watched, their disbelief slowly turning into curiosity. They had dismissed humans as fragile, incapable of understanding their technology. Yet here was one human, repairing engines in a manner they had never imagined. By midday, both turbines were operational. The hum of energy ran through the dreadnought, resonating in its metallic bones. Crew members murmured among themselves. Even Liara allowed a faint trace of approval to show in her eyes. Eli felt a surge of pride. Not for himself, but for proving that humans were capable of more than the galaxy expected. During a short break, he leaned against the railing of the engine bay and surveyed the work. Liara approached quietly, her hands folded behind her back. You risked yourself yesterday, she said. You risk yourself today, why? Eli considered her question. Because someone has to. And because we humans, we don't just survive, we adapt. We trade danger for reward. You gave me a cloak yesterday. I saved your core. That's fair. Liara tilted her head slightly. Fair trade, he smiled, repeating her words softly. Exactly. Fair trade. There was a pause, a moment of understanding between 2 species from opposite corners of the galaxy. She had seen humans only as fragile and reckless. Now she saw something else. Resilience, ingenuity, and courage. The final turbine awaited them, the largest and most damaged of all. Eli's hands were tired, his back ached, but he didn't hesitate. He climbed into the turbine chamber, eyes scanning the complex array of conduits and controls. The Xyrith officers whispered among themselves. This human was risking life and limb, ignoring protocol, and somehow bringing life back to a dying ship. Hours blurred into night. Sparks, steam, and humming metal filled the chamber. Eli's mind moved faster than his body, improvising solutions, patching damaged circuits, and creating temporary stabilizers. Liara observed, occasionally offering advice, but mostly she allowed him freedom. Freedom that humans understood instinctively. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the turbine roared to life. Lights flashed, control panels glowed steadily, and the hum of power ran smoothly through the dreadnought. Eli collapsed against the railing, breathing heavily. Crew members stepped forward, their eyes wide with astonishment. Liara approached him, her expression unreadable, then finally spoke. "You have done what none of us believed possible," she said. "The Velsha is alive because of you." Eli smiled weakly. "I told you, fair trade." She paused, then nodded slightly. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as we thought. Perhaps we underestimated your species." The engine bay was quiet now, save for the gentle hum of stabilized turbines. Eli looked at Liara, exhaustion and pride mixing in his chest. "So what now?" he asked. She studied him, her eyes reflecting the pulsing blue lights of the bay. "Now," she said, "we prepare to move. The ship must return to our territory, and you will continue to work with us, not as a prisoner but as an engineer who saved the Velsha." Eli laughed softly. "That's a promotion I can live with." Liara's lips quirked in what might have been the closest thing to a smile he had seen from her species. "Do not grow arrogant, human," she warned, though her tone lacked its usual edge. "Not arrogant," he said, "just confident. Fair trade, remember?" The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation and minor repairs. Eli worked with crew members, explaining his human techniques, showing them how to adapt their rigid systems to unexpected problems. Slowly, their initial skepticism gave way to curiosity, then to respect. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but undeniably effective. As the stars moved past the hull, Eli realized something profound. He wasn't just repairing a ship. He was changing minds. He was showing that humans could be more than survivalists. They could be heroes, collaborators, even leaders. And the Zyrith, for the first time, were beginning to see humans not as fragile outsiders but as equals, capable of courage, creativity, and honor. By the time he finally returned to his quarters, Eli was exhausted but satisfied. He wrapped the alien cloak around himself, its warmth comforting in a way he hadn't expected. Outside, the hum of the ship was steady, the turbines alive, the dreadnought ready to move. And somewhere in the distance, he knew the galaxy was beginning to notice the quiet power of humanity, resilient, brave, and willing to trade fear for fairness. He drifted to sleep that night with the same thought echoing in his mind. Fair trade. Tomorrow he would face more challenges. But tonight he had proven something incredible. Humans were not just survivors, they were builders, problem solvers, and perhaps, just perhaps, the heart that could keep a dying starship alive. The dreadnought Velsha hummed steadily now, alive with the combined efforts of Zyrith and human ingenuity. Its turbines roared with renewed energy, and its shields glimmered faintly as they held against the pressure of space. Eli Grant leaned over a console, sweat drying on his brow, and traced the final power conduits. Every circuit had been tested, every panel inspected. For a human alone in alien territory, this was nothing short of miraculous, but he knew it was only the beginning. Liara approached silently, her long stride carrying authority as well as curiosity. "You have exceeded even my expectations," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "The ship is operational. The engine's shields and weapon arrays are all stable." Eli leaned back, wiping his hands. "I've done what any engineer would do if the choice was life or death." His eyes met hers. "We're lucky. And if we weren't lucky, well, then at least we died trying." She studied him. "Lucky is not enough. You humans, you risk everything without hesitation. It is strange." "Maybe," he replied. "But sometimes strange works better than careful." Liara nodded, though her face remained unreadable. "We move now. The capital awaits." The journey was tense but uneventful. Eli spent his time monitoring the systems, correcting minor fluctuations, and teaching Zyrith engineers a few human improvisation techniques. Their initial skepticism had faded into fascination. They asked questions, experimented, and occasionally hesitated before following his lead. Eli smiled at every small success. He could see the respect growing in their eyes, subtle but unmistakable. When the capital system finally appeared on the view screen, a series of enormous structures floated in space like jagged moons. Council ships and patrol vessels surrounded the central city. Their forms were angular, intimidating, and bristling with weapons. Eli swallowed. He knew that arriving here as a human would be dangerous. The council did not trust his kind. Many would have considered him a liability, a weakness that could be exploited or destroyed. Liara's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "We have no choice but to show them the truth," she said. "You are not my prisoner. You are my engineer. You will stand with me." Eli nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. "Fair trade," he whispered. It was a phrase that had carried him this far, a bond of mutual respect that transcended species. As the Velsha entered the docking bay of the capital, alarms blared across the Zereth fleet. Council members, officers, and senior engineers scrambled to witness the unexpected arrival. Whispers spread quickly. A human was aboard the dreadnought, fully operational and alive. The docking clamps engaged, and the massive airlock opened with a hiss. Eli stepped forward, tall and steady despite exhaustion, flanked by Liara. The council chamber awaited them, a vast space lined with silver panels and crystal lighting, where the most powerful Zyrith leaders gathered to judge all matters of interstellar law and order. The chamber fell silent as they entered. Eyes, some glowing faint violet, turned toward Eli. Murmurs rippled through the room. "A human?" one elder asked. "Impossible. Their species is fragile. They cannot survive in space without protection." Eli ignored the whispers. He had been underestimated before. Now he intended to prove them wrong. Liara stepped forward, her posture commanding. "Council members," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "The Velsha has returned thanks to this human. He repaired the engines, stabilized the shields, and ensured the safety of this ship and crew. He is no prisoner. He is our engineer, and he saved us all." A wave of disbelief swept through the council. "A human?" another elder repeated, skepticism lacing his tone. "You expect us to believe a human restored a dreadnought?" Eli stepped forward, his voice steady. "It's true, I did it. The turbines were damaged, the plasma regulators burnt out, and the reactor was unstable. I used human engineering methods, improvisation, adaptation, and quick decisions. That's how humans survive. And it worked." The chamber was quiet now, the council's skepticism giving way to curiosity. A few younger members leaned forward, studying him with keen interest. Liara gave him a small nod, a silent signal to continue. Eli raised a hand and pointed toward the view panel behind them. The Velsha's systems came alive in holographic projection. Engines glowing, shields active, weapon arrays powered. Lines of energy flowed through the ship's systems, demonstrating stability and efficiency. The council watched astonished. Every fluctuation had been corrected. Every critical failure had been prevented. One of the elders, a tall Zyrith with silver patterns on his forehead, spoke slowly. "And you did this? Without our technology?" Eli shook his head. "I used what I could, adapted what I had, and trusted my experience. Humans do not always follow procedure. We find solutions." The council murmured among themselves, some incredulous, some thoughtful. Liara's voice cut through the room. "You underestimated the human mind. It is not weak. It is resourceful. It does not yield to fear. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It acts, and in action, it creates strength." Silence fell, the weight of her words sinking in. The council members had never seen a human in action. They had dismissed them, mocked them, and considered them fragile. Yet here, standing alive and triumphant, was proof of humanity's resilience and intelligence. One elder, the eldest in the room, leaned forward. His voice was measured, cautious. "So, the humans saved not only this ship but its crew, including you, Captain Liara?" Liara nodded. "Yes, without him the Velsha would not have returned." Eli stepped forward, raising his hand slightly in acknowledgement. "I did what anyone would do if it mattered. I don't want praise. I just did what had to be done. Fair trade. Your ship, your crew, my effort. We all survived together." There was a long pause. Then slowly the eldest elder spoke. "We have judged humans for centuries based on weakness and unpredictability. Yet today one human has shown us courage, intelligence, and loyalty. Perhaps we were wrong." The chamber erupted in murmurs, some members nodding, others staring at Eli with newfound respect. Liara placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, the gesture subtle but filled with approval. "He is not my prisoner," she said again, louder this time. "He is a symbol of what humans can achieve when they act with purpose. Judge him not as fragile, but as capable. Eli felt a warmth rise in his chest. He had never sought recognition, never desired power. Yet in this moment he realized that humans, his species, could command respect across the galaxy. One act of courage, one refusal to yield to fear, could shift perception, could change history. The eldest elder finally spoke again, softer this time. Perhaps humanity deserves consideration. Perhaps we have underestimated their potential. Eli smiled faintly. It's not about consideration. It's about what you do when the choice is survival or failure. Humans act, we adapt, we find ways. That is all. Liara's lips curved in the slightest acknowledgement. Fair trade, she said, echoing the phrase that had begun their journey together. Exactly, Eli replied. Fair trade. For the first time, the council seemed to understand. It was not a simple transaction. It was respect, mutual acknowledgement, and the understanding that survival demanded cooperation and trust. Eli's human perspective had bridged the gap between two species. He had shown that courage, ingenuity, and loyalty could carry a fragile-looking human further than the council had imagined. As the meeting adjourned, Eli walked beside Liara out of the chamber. The capital outside was bright with alien architecture, ships moving in precise patterns across space. Crew members and council officers now looked at him not with skepticism, but with cautious admiration. Children, curious and wide-eyed, peered from observation decks, learning that humans could indeed be heroes. Eli looked at Liara, exhausted but proud. So, what now? He asked. Now, she said, her voice calm but determined. We prepare for the next challenge. But you have already changed how my people see humans. That is no small achievement, he smiled faintly. Fair trade, Captain. She nodded, the corner of her lips rising slightly in a gesture that could almost be called a smile. Yes, human. Fair trade. And as the stars stretched before them, Eli realized that humanity had earned its first real respect among the Xyrath, not through war or negotiation, not through fear or domination, but through courage, ingenuity, and the quiet heroism of one human willing to risk everything for life itself. The Velshaw moved forward, alive and whole, and with it humanity's place among the stars was no longer a question. It was a promise.